going on, guys? Junior's Fishing Company. Another tying video. No bucktail, all squimpish hair and angel hair. So this is a 7-inch 6th Sense swim jig, streamer, swim jig, whatever you want to call it. I've got Squimpish white, Squimpish silver fox, and then sand. So like this is kind of like a almost like a super light brown and gray, which is kind of like sand, I guess. It's a really good name. But those three colors, and I've just blended them together with some Larva Lace Angel Hair Silver Holographic. This color is just crazy good. And this angel hair, it's super messy. This is a super messy jig. But this angel hair with the Squimpish, I don't know if it's, I didn't put a ton in there. I don't know if you can see the flash in there. But this was a lot of fun to tie. There's 2 hollow ties in here and then 2 straight ties. I think this is a 3/8 ounce jig head. But let's get tying. Alright, so 6th Sense. This might be a 3/8 ounce swim bait jig head. Again, this is going to be a nice little streamer pattern. I've got my stacks kind of ready to go. I love Squimpish hair. Alright, so 6th Sense swim jig. I'm going to actually end up with this Squimpish hair. I'm going to do 2 regular ties and then 2 hollow ties at the end. This first hollow tie I do right by this skirt collar, I'm going to actually kind of bullet tie it, I think. And then this last one, I'll just kind of do a traditional. It's so annoying to try and reverse tie with a giant jig head. And it never comes out. I still haven't been able to figure out a really good way to do it, and I'm just not skilled enough in reverse tying to do it perfectly. But in my opinion, it's still usually worth it. So I'm gonna do this first one. This bait is, again, maybe 7 inches, a little bit less. So I'm gonna get this first one in, and I tried to make them, I thought these Squimpish fly colors would come out lighter than they actually did, but so it's going to be a little bit of a darker bait than I was planning, but that's alright. So I'm going to get this first one, again, just kind of a traditional tie, and I've got a decent amount, so I have to be pretty careful when I'm wrapping this. I want to get some good tight wraps. And I'm going to use some super glue. I'm going to start right at my hook point, and I'm going to end up putting quite a bit up in front of my fingers, just because the Squimpish hair, when you're restacking it, it can kind of get, it's not like deer hair where most of them are going to be right in line. There's probably some Squimpish that end like right by my finger, and then obviously a bunch end that end right here. So you always want to leave a little bit of room, in my opinion, for that. Otherwise you're going to lose a pretty good amount of materials. And I might even still lose some materials as I comb this out. But that's just the way it goes. So I'm going to get that combed out so it's going to be easier to spin this around my hook. I want to get it 360. You might get some tangling in your hook, but that's alright. Just have a comb with you in your tackle box, and you can comb it between catches or casts or whatever you want to do. Get that fed around. I'm not super concerned with super duper evenness. You always want it to be perfect, but I'm not gonna this bait is going to swim like this, so if anything, kind of want to go heavy on the top, or what's going to be my top. And then I'm going to get some really good wraps of this. And then I'm going to put some super glue down just to kind of lock everything in. Squimpish flies are, the material is super cool, but it's slick stuff. So I'm just gonna load up. This isn't really for durability. I mean, obviously it's gonna help, but this is just to keep all my material on my bait. So the next one I do, I'm gonna come down a little bit. I don't need to add any flash because I already blended all of that flash in. Come to about right here, and there's not a huge thread bump, so it's not gonna impede the shape of my bait too much. These stacks are gonna get thicker as I go, but this is pretty thick because it absorbs quite a bit of water. I mean, it's a synthetic, so it's not like, but it definitely fishes smaller than what it looks like in the vise. So you wanna, on Squimpish, I always add more than I think. So you can kind of see that taper there. I want that taper to be relatively significant. I mean, that's probably an inch or more, maybe a little bit more. I want it to be about an inch of taper for all 4 of these stacks, because then from here to my last one is like 4 inches. That was just, again, I mean, you can go as detailed as you want on a fly jig, whatever you want to call it. You can go as detailed as you want, but if you want a decent taper, and I'm just combing this out, that's what I'm doing over here. I'm just combing it out because this stuff gets pretty tangled. So I'll put that down. Again, I'm going to have a nice little chunk hanging out. Get this glue off. Get that right down there. Get 2 wraps. Then I can comb it and separate it. Spin it around again. You can see this is going to be a pretty big bait, but again, it's going to collapse a little bit. I'm going to get this, again, super tight wraps with this 210. 210 is this UTC. Then I'll get some glue down just to hold that in too. You could probably get away with 140. I don't use 140 a ton. I don't know how many videos I've done with 140. It's either 70 or 210 or 280 really. I know a lot of people who only use 140, but you can use whatever you can get away with really. I just know 210 is it's strong enough where I can really ream down and not have to worry about my thread breaking. I've only broken 210 a couple times on wraps. Dubbing loops are a little bit different, but so I'm going to let this dry for a second, and then this first hollow tie I'm going to do is going to be kind of a bullet. So I'm going to wrap it back and then wrap onto the material. You'll see in just a sec. Every time I grab a new stack, I'm going to comb it out with some really fine teeth just to make sure that it's not going to tangle up on me. I gotta let that glue dry anyway. So I'll come up here about as close, pretty close to that skirt collar. And it's always a little bit harder to measure the reverse tie, but really it doesn't make a huge difference. I'm going to actually cut quite a bit of this off Take some of these longer ones out. But you want a full taper, so I don't want to take too much of this off. Trim that. Flip it in my fingers. And I don't want a ton on this side, but again, I gotta be careful with how much Squimpish hair is gonna sit. I just don't want a ton falling out either. So I'm gonna comb this. Every time you do this, you can see more and more separate. This is a very messy fly with the larva lace, angel hair, and Squimpish. This is just my lap when I was making these stacks. It was crazy. So don't do this where you're gonna get in trouble. So the tough thing is this skirt collar is gonna be in my way, so I gotta fix it. Alright, so I've got it pretty much as evenly as I can. I have a little gap where this weed guard is, and I'm going to try and just move materials where that is when I push it back. Again, this bait is not, this jig was not meant to be reverse tied on, and so, but I want that body of a reverse tie. So I'm going to just do my best to get all of this pushed back first, and then I can start to move these materials a little bit so that that part of my bait doesn't have too much of a gap in it. Get that pushed so it doesn't look too bad. Get maybe just a loose wrap just to see. Oh, sorry. And then I can just kind of fluff it around. Push some of this material up. And that doesn't, I mean, that's not perfect, but that'll do, donkey. So I'm going to get all of this, as much of it as I can without getting it caught in my vise, pushed back, and then I'm just going to come back here and I'm going to come up, and this is going to be tricky because this is slick stuff. So maybe, there we go, caught. You might just have to do a couple tries, get a couple tight wraps, and then you can just come down. And that'll add just a little bit more body to right there. So I'll add some super glue. I just sat here for about 2 minutes thinking if I should do this bullet tie or not, or if I should just go back and do a traditional reverse tie. It's too late to go back now, I just glued it. But I overthink it every time, so I ended up just going with what I chose to do at the beginning, because that's what I wanted, that's what I thought about doing at the beginning anyway. So I'm going to come up here, that's plenty glued down. I'll come in front and get a nice little layer of thread here. And I'm going to go probably right in the middle of where that is. And I'm going to grab my last clump and I'm going to try and stack it. But again, this stuff is so thin, this angel hair and this Squimpish is so thin, it doesn't stack like that very well like you would bucktail. But this angel hair is just great for stuff like this when you blend it in. Traditional like Flashaboo and stuff is just thicker, and so you just don't really get. I'm going to take some of these longer ones out. This angel hair just is, I mean, you breathe on it and it's moving. So I want to go so you can kind of see how much farther that goes down. I mean, that's probably 3-4 inches right there. So I'm going to cord up my thread. And again, it's tricky doing these reverse ties with this stupid weight guard. But I'm going to get that down. Kind of just do a pinch wrap. That head actually might make it a little bit easier. I'll get 2 good wraps. Comb that out so it's, I mean, it's already pretty spread out just doing that. You can kind of see it wants to spin. Get this all spun around. As evenly as I can. Get some of these materials right by my guard, and then I can kind of just check it here. If I'm going to have a really even one, I want it to be this one. Comb this out. You can kind of see some thin spots or thick spots. That should be good. I'll get a couple tight wraps here. Hold these so they don't slip. I know you're not supposed to do a bunch of wraps right here, but I have to let go of this to get this pushed back. Just makes it easier without a push tool. Feed that on both sides of my hook. Then I'm going to get my thread through. You just don't want to hit too many materials when you're pushing that thread through. Then get a few good wraps up here, and then I can start building it up. My thread collar. And right here I can build up a pretty big collar to keep this material down. I'll use a little bit of super glue too, but I have so much room by this head, so I'm really not overly concerned about having a big thread head or collar or whatever you want to call it. Push some of that material back with my thread, and I can build it up. I'll put some glue down so you can kind of see there's a little bit of a body right. So now it actually kind of looks like a streamer, right? So I'm going to get a little bit of super glue down though, just to, so it keeps that shape. But that's so far so good. I mean, this is really light material, so you're going to, I don't want it too thick, so you're going to be able to see through it. I'll get some glue down. Just so it keeps that shape. I can't remember who I saw do that. I think it was with that musky streamer. I might have said it, what channel that was, but I saw a guy do it and I really liked it. But you gotta be careful because now I'm getting glue all over me. Now I could do like a red collar or something like that, but I just like, there's already a little bit of a hot spot on this head. So I'm just not gonna do that. I'm just gonna really do a couple little knots here, maybe a few. And I'm just going to put some head cement down for durability, and so that thread is going to stay on there. And then I can get this bait a little bit wet, and hopefully it doesn't collapse too much where this is going to be. It's going to be a longer, thinner bait for sure, and that's alright. It's kind of what Squimpish does really well. It moves well. You don't need it to be some balloon. So I'm going to get this combed out. Just to make sure that everything's not tangled up. Alright. Dripping wet. So this is as small as it's ever going to get. When it's in the water, it opens up a little bit more. But you can see that little taper. There's a super long, thin bait. But again, when there's water in those fibers, it definitely opens up a lot more. But no, I really like this. I'm really excited. You can see just some flash in there. Appreciate it if you've made it this far. Leave a comment below, like, subscribe. Check out the page, community tab, all that stuff. Leave comments on what you want to see. But see you in the next one.